If your body is warning you before your mind admits it, do not push through that. By the time most people let themselves quit, they have already spent months, sometimes years, absorbing damage from a job that was never going to change. I am not someone who tells you to walk away with nothing lined up. I talk about building a strategy first. But there are 5 situations where waiting for the perfect exit is the mistake, where every extra month costs more than starting over would. Today, I am walking you through what those look like from the inside. Hey, it's Dre. If insider career strategy and the mechanics nobody explains to you at review time are useful, hit subscribe and turn notifications on, because a new one of these goes up every week. I have spent close to 2 decades on the other side of the table, in recruiting, compensation planning, and performance calibration, sitting in the rooms where decisions about people's careers actually get made. And one thing I can tell you with total confidence is that most of what happens to your career happens somewhere you never get to see. So if you are sitting here right now, asking yourself whether you should stay in your job or go, you are not in some rare minority. That question runs through almost every professional's head at some point. What actually determines the outcome is not whether you ask it, it is how much damage you are willing to absorb before you act on the answer. There is nothing more draining, physically or emotionally, than tolerating a job you have grown to dread. And it never stays contained to just you. It bleeds into your relationships, your patience with the people you love, your sleep, your health. I want to be clear about something. A steady paycheck is not a good enough reason to stay in an environment that is actively working against you. That does not mean you should bail at the first sign of difficulty. Companies notice, and honestly they should, when a candidate has shown they can push through a hard period and come out the other side. A lot of people also stay in bad situations far longer than they should because they feel some sense of loyalty to a manager who gave them a first shot or a company that hired them straight out of school. And most of us grow up hearing that job hopping looks bad on a resume, so we white-knuckle it through things we probably shouldn't. But hiring managers and recruiters can usually tell the difference between someone who hops jobs for no real reason and someone who left a genuinely bad situation. You do not owe your well-being to a company whose values do not match your own, or to a role that is doing you real harm. That said, there are specific situations that go past hard and into get-out-now territory, no matter what your bank account looks like. If you have ever lived through one of these 5 yourself, tell me which one in the comments. It helps me know what to cover next. Let's get into the 5 signs it is time to leave. The first sign is that the job is making you sick, mentally, physically, or both. If a role has you overworked, in over your head, or constantly overwhelmed to the point that it is affecting your body, that is not a badge of toughness. That is a warning light. In the organizations I have worked around, I have seen people go through this kind of prolonged stress and come out the other side almost unrecognizable. A different demeanor, a different outlook, sometimes needing medication just to function day to day. If you have reached the point where you feel like you need to see a doctor because of what your job is doing to you, that is not normal, and no title or salary is worth that trade. Some of the signs worth watching for: a loss of appetite or a sudden change in weight, disrupted sleep, losing interest in hobbies you used to care about, a low hum of anxiety that does not go away, waking up in the middle of the night running through everything you are dreading at work. In more extreme cases, this kind of stress can show up physically: hair loss, skin flare-ups, a general sense of dread every Sunday night before the week starts. This is not an exhaustive list, and everyone carries stress differently, so use your own judgment here. But if your job is functionally making you unwell, that is a signal worth taking seriously, and it usually means the problem runs deeper than one bad week. Sometimes it is not even the company. It might be the career path itself that is wrong for you, and that is worth sitting with honestly. One thing worth knowing from the inside: most companies will never flag this for you. There is no system that tracks your well-being the way it tracks your output. So if you are waiting for someone above you to notice and step in, you could be waiting a very long time. And that first sign alone is enough reason for a lot of people watching this to already be updating their resume. But it gets more specific from here, so stay with me. The second sign is that you are working for a genuinely bad manager. At some point in almost every career, you will work for someone you cannot stand. And dissatisfaction with a manager is, in my experience, the single biggest driver of people quietly opening up a job search. Maybe you were a strong performer somewhere else, and now under a new manager, you cannot do anything right. Your confidence takes a hit, and it starts bleeding into how you see your own value. I have seen managers walk back bonuses that were already earned simply because they felt like it in the moment. I have seen people get corrected or embarrassed in front of their peers, which is one of the clearest signs of a manager who has no business being in that seat. Not everyone who ends up in a leadership role actually has the emotional intelligence to lead. A good manager gives you feedback meant to help you grow, delivered in a way that respects you. A poor one delivers feedback designed to make you feel small, dismisses your ideas outright, or uses criticism as a way to control rather than develop you. If any of that sounds familiar, treat it as a real signal, not just a rough patch. Here is the part most people never get told. In a lot of organizations, a bad manager's version of events is what actually gets written down and remembered, while yours is the one that fades. That is not fair, and it is not something you can usually fix from below them on the org chart, which is exactly why this sign carries so much weight. If this is resonating so far, this is exactly the kind of thing I break down every week. The stuff that happens behind closed doors that actually shapes your career. Subscribe if you have not already. It genuinely helps this channel keep going. Now, let's get into the third sign. The third sign is a toxic overall culture, separate from any one manager. If the unspoken rule at your company is win at all costs, that mentality is usually coming straight from the top, and it tends to show up in the turnover numbers eventually. There is a real difference between a competitive, ambitious workplace and one where winning matters more than treating people decently. Most companies publish a set of core values somewhere, on the website, in the break room, in onboarding material. Watch what happens when those values collide with an actual decision. If leadership consistently chooses the opposite of what is printed on the wall, that tells you what the culture actually is. Pay attention to how people talk about each other when they think no one senior is listening, whether goals feel realistic or set up to fail, and whether people get real credit for what they accomplish. Toxicity does not only come from the top either. Sometimes it is a coworker who seems intent on making your work life difficult, spreading things behind your back, going around you straight to your manager. These people often end up with more influence than they should, usually because they have been there a long time or have built trust with someone above them. A manager who is paying attention will catch this and manage it. A manager who is oblivious to it, or worse, aligned with it, is telling you everything you need to know. You are not going to win that fight from the inside, and your energy is better spent finding somewhere healthier. A simple test I have seen work well. Watch what actually gets rewarded at your company, not what gets said in a meeting. If the people who get promoted are the ones who match the stated values, the culture is probably real. If it is consistently the opposite, that gap is your answer. The fourth sign is that the company is doing something illegal or asking you to. This one is not really a judgment call. If an organization's moral compass is that broken and there is real risk you could be held personally liable for going along with it, that changes the calculation completely. This might show up as financial misconduct, environmental shortcuts, or violations of employment law. A quick note here, since this touches on legal territory. I am not an attorney, and this is not legal advice. So, if you are genuinely dealing with something like this, it is worth speaking with an employment attorney or your local labor board directly, because the right path forward depends heavily on your specific situation and jurisdiction. Generally speaking, the first move is to report it internally, to HR or to legal if your company has one. If it gets reported and nothing changes, and the same behavior keeps happening, that is your answer. No job is worth putting your professional reputation or your own legal standing at risk over. The fifth and final sign is being asked to do something unsafe. Most companies are supposed to operate under baseline workplace safety standards, but there are organizations that quietly cut corners on those standards in the name of speed or cost. Safety is one of the few things that should never be negotiable, and if a company is willing to compromise on it, that tells you exactly where you fall on their list of priorities. Again, a brief disclaimer. This is general information, not legal or safety guidance for your specific workplace. And if you believe you are in real danger, that is a classroom for your safety officer, HR, or the relevant regulatory body in your area, not something to work through based on a video. Trust your own instincts here. If something feels wrong, raise it with your manager first. A sensational one will act on it. If nothing happens, escalate to HR. Any leadership team that genuinely cares about its people will pause and address a legitimate safety concern before moving forward. If yours does not, and the message you are getting is that the bottom line matters more than your physical well-being, that is not a culture problem to work around. That is a reason to leave, full stop. So there are the 5 situations that go beyond ordinary friction at work. A job that is making you sick. A manager who has no business leading. A culture that does not practice what it claims to believe. An organization breaking the law, or one asking you to risk your safety. Everything else, a rough project, a slow quarter, boredom, feeling underused, is usually something you can work through, and honestly, companies respect people who show they can push through friction instead of running from it. Ask yourself what you have actually tried before deciding a normal challenge is a deal breaker. Have you asked to lead something new? Have you tried building a skill that would change your options? There is a real line between job hopping out of impatience and leaving a situation that was genuinely damaging you. And only you know which side of that line you are standing on. A steady job was never supposed to be an excuse to tolerate something that is quietly costing you your health, your integrity, or your safety. At the same time, none of this means every uncomfortable stretch at work is a sign to run. Discomfort and damage are not the same thing, and learning to tell them apart is honestly one of the more valuable skills you can build in your career. Your career is yours to manage, and no one else is going to make this call for you. If this helped you think through your own situation, hit subscribe. Drop a comment about which of these 5 hit closest to home, and I will see you in the next one, where I am breaking down exactly how to leave a job like this without torching your reference or your next paycheck on the way out.